Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood at attention in the briefing room, her compact frame dwarfed by the towering alien officers surrounding her. The Zetharian High Command had requested a human representative for their upcoming operation against the Vex Collective, and Earth's military had sent their best. Unfortunately, none of the assembled aliens seemed to believe it. This is their finest warrior? General Korath's mandibles clicked in what Sarah recognized as contemptuous amusement. The 8-foot-tall insectoid being studied her with compound eyes that reflected the harsh lighting of the command vessel. She appears barely out of adolescence. Commander Thex 9, a crystalline being whose body chimed softly as he moved, adjusted his optical sensors. Human females are typically smaller than their males. Perhaps this is some form of jest from Earth Command. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She had heard variations of this conversation countless times throughout her career. At 5'4" and weighing barely 120 pounds, she didn't look like anyone's idea of a super soldier. Her youthful face and slight build had earned her mockery from human and alien forces alike. "If I may, sirs," Sarah spoke for the first time since entering the room. Her voice was calm, measured. "Earth Command selected me based on my combat record, not my appearance." Admiral Vextai, a reptilian being with scales that shifted color with his emotions, hissed softly. His scales had turned a mottled yellow-green, indicating skepticism. "Your record shows mostly defensive engagements against pirates and raiders. We face the Vex Collective's finest shock troops. This requires experience in large-scale warfare." "With respect, Admiral," Sarah replied, "I've commanded successful operations against forces that outnumbered my units 50-1. The principles of warfare don't change based on scale." General Korath's chittering grew louder. Bold words from such a small creature. "Tell me, little human, how many enemies have you personally eliminated?" The question hung in the air. Sarah could feel the weight of their collective doubt pressing down on her. These beings had formed an alliance with humanity not out of respect, but out of necessity. The Vex Collective threatened all sentient life in this sector, and Earth's military had proven surprisingly effective against them in several minor skirmishes. But looking at their chosen representative, the aliens clearly questioned humanity's actual capabilities. 2,417 confirmed kills, Sarah answered matter-of-factly, not including vehicles, automated systems, or indirect casualties from strategic actions. The room fell silent. Even by alien standards, that number was staggering for a single soldier. Commander Thex 9's crystalline structure flickered rapidly, indicating rapid calculation. "Impossible," Admiral Vextai declared. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Your own records indicate you are only 28 years old. Those numbers would require you to have been killing enemies since childhood." Sarah's expression didn't change. "I've been in active combat since I was 16, sir. Humanity doesn't have the luxury of extended peacetime training like some species." She thought back to her first deployment, fresh out of accelerated military academy. The outer colony of New Shanghai had been under siege by Kalith raiders for 3 months when her unit arrived. She had been assigned as a communications specialist, expected to stay safely behind the lines. That plan had lasted exactly 47 minutes after landfall. The Kalith had broken through the defensive perimeter using a tactic no one had seen before. They had burrowed underground for weeks, emerging directly inside the human base. Sarah had found herself face-to-face with a Kalith warrior twice her size, armed with nothing but her sidearm and her wits. She had killed 17 raiders that day, saving the life of her commanding officer and turning the tide of the battle. By the end of the week, she was leading assault teams. By the end of the month, she was planning the counteroffensive that ultimately drove the Kalith from the system. "Your silence is telling," General Korath observed, misreading her moment of reflection. Perhaps you inflate your accomplishments to compensate for your obvious physical limitations. Sarah's hand moved unconsciously to the small device clipped to her belt, a tactical analysis computer that contained detailed records of every engagement she had participated in. She could display the evidence, but she suspected it would only lead to further scrutiny and doubt. Instead, she simply nodded. "I understand your concerns, General. Perhaps it would be best if you assigned me to a support role for this operation." The aliens exchanged glances, their equivalent of satisfied nods passing between them. Admiral Vexitai's scales shifted to a pleased blue-green. "A wise suggestion. You will coordinate supply lines with the rear guard. Leave the actual fighting to more experienced warriors." As the briefing continued, Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the Vex Collective's positions. The enemy had established a fortress on the planet Zerion Prime, using the planet's natural crystal formations to create a nearly impregnable defensive position. The Allied plan was straightforward and, in Sarah's opinion, fatally flawed. They intended to assault the fortress directly with overwhelming force, a classic hammer blow approach that the Zetharians favored. It would work eventually, but the casualties would be enormous. Sarah could see at least 7 major weaknesses in the Vex position that could be exploited with minimal losses, but she knew her suggestions would be dismissed. The meeting concluded with assignments being handed out. Sarah found herself relegated to logistics coordination, working with supply ships that would remain safely in orbit. As the other officers filed out, discussing their glorious upcoming battle, she remained behind to study the tactical displays more carefully. "Having second thoughts about your deployment request?" Commander Thex 9 had lingered as well, his crystalline form casting prismatic patterns on the walls. "Just reviewing the mission parameters," Sarah replied diplomatically. "The Vex are not like the raiders you've faced," Thex 9 continued. "They are a hive mind, coordinating their actions with perfect precision. They adapt to tactics within minutes of seeing them deployed. Your small unit guerrilla actions would be useless against them." Sarah nodded politely, though privately she disagreed. Hive minds had weaknesses just like any other command structure, often more severe weaknesses because of their dependence on centralized control. But explaining that would require admitting she had studied Vex tactics extensively, which would lead to questions about why a support specialist had such knowledge. The truth was that Sarah had requested this assignment specifically because of the Vex. She had been tracking their expansion for 2 years, analyzing their methods, and developing countermeasures. Earth Command knew this, which was why they had sent her. The aliens, however, had made it clear they viewed humanity as junior partners in this alliance. 3 days later, the fleet arrived at Zerion Prime. Sarah watched from the supply ship's observation deck as the alien assault forces prepared for their attack. Thousands of Zetharian warriors filled the deployment bays, their chitinous armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Crystalline Thexian combat forms arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns. Reptilian Vextai soldiers performed ritual war dances that had been practiced for millennia. It was an impressive sight, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a moment of doubt. These were experienced, professional military forces with advanced technology and centuries of warfare behind them. Perhaps she was overestimating humanity's tactical abilities. That doubt lasted until the first wave of attackers hit the Vex defenses. Sarah watched in growing horror as the assault forces were systematically destroyed. The Vex had indeed adapted their defenses based on standard alien military doctrine. Every attack vector the Allies used was anticipated and countered. Energy weapons were deflected by adaptive shielding. Physical assaults were channeled into kill zones. Even the orbital bombardment that was supposed to soften the target proved ineffective against the fortress's crystalline structure. Within 6 hours, the Allied forces had lost 30% of their strength and gained exactly 0 meters of ground. General Korath was calling for a tactical withdrawal when Sarah made her decision. She left the observation deck and made her way to the communications center. The supply ship's captain, a veteran Thexian named Clear Song of Victory, looked up in surprise as she entered. "Lieutenant Chen, do you require something for the logistics coordination?" "I need to speak with General Korath," Sarah said firmly. "The general is rather busy at the moment," Clear Song of Victory replied, his crystalline structure dimming with concern. "The assault has encountered unexpected resistance. That's why I need to speak with him. I have tactical recommendations that could salvage this operation." The Thexian captain's optical sensors focused on her intently. "You believe you can succeed where our most experienced commanders have failed?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "I believe I can see things they're missing because they're too close to the problem." Clear Song of Victory considered this for a long moment, his internal light patterns flickering in what Sarah recognized as rapid thought. Finally, he activated the communication array. "General Korath, the Human Logistics Coordinator requests permission to address the command staff." The response came back immediately, tinged with barely controlled fury. "I am somewhat occupied at the moment, Captain. Unless the human has discovered a way to transport troops through solid rock, her input is not required." "With respect, General," Sarah spoke directly into the communicator, "I believe I have identified several tactical opportunities that haven't been explored." There was a long pause before Korath responded. "Very well. You have 30 seconds to present your miraculous solution, little human." Sarah took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few moments. The Vex Fortress is designed to repel conventional assault tactics, but it has 3 critical vulnerabilities. First, their crystalline power grid creates resonance patterns that can be disrupted by precisely timed explosions. Second, their defensive positioning assumes attacks will come from the primary landing zones, leaving several approach vectors completely undefended. Third, their command structure depends on maintaining perfect communication with their individual units, which can be disrupted if you know the right frequencies. Another pause. This one longer. When Korath spoke again, his tone had changed slightly. "You claim to know the frequencies that can disrupt Vex communications?" "I've spent 2 years studying their tactical patterns," Sarah admitted. "I know how they think, how they adapt, and how they can be defeated." 2 years? Admiral Vextai's voice cut into the conversation. How could a supply coordinator have access to such strategic intelligence? Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. There was no going back now. "Because I'm not a supply coordinator, Admiral. I'm a strategic intelligence analyst first class, and I've been hunting the Vex for longer than this alliance has existed." The communication channel went silent. Sarah could imagine the scene in the command ship's bridge, alien officers trying to reconcile their assumptions about her with this new information. She had been deliberately misrepresented to them, though she suspected they had misinterpreted her role themselves rather than being deliberately deceived. Finally, General Korath's voice returned, cold and precise. "Explain these vulnerabilities in detail, Analyst Chen, and explain why we should trust the tactical assessment of someone who has been deceiving us about her true role." Sarah straightened unconsciously, falling into the focused mindset that had carried her through dozens of successful operations. "The deception wasn't intentional, General. You asked for a human representative and assumed I was a combat specialist rather than an intelligence analyst. But my analysis capabilities are exactly what you need right now." She activated the supply ship's tactical display, linking it to the command ship's systems. 3-dimensional models of the Vex Fortress appeared, highlighting the weaknesses she had identified. "The Vex use biomechanical architecture that grows rather than being constructed," she began, falling into lecture mode. "This gives them tremendous adaptive capability, but it also creates structural dependencies that can be exploited. Their power distribution system follows organic patterns, which means it has natural resonance frequencies. As Sarah continued her analysis, she could feel the mood of her audience changing. The aliens were professional soldiers, and they recognized tactical brilliance when they heard it. Her assessment wasn't just theoretical. She provided specific targeting coordinates, timing requirements, and resource allocations for a three-pronged assault that would exploit all the weaknesses simultaneously. This plan would require perfect coordination between all Allied forces, Commander Thex 9 observed. The margin for error is virtually non-existent. Yes, sir, Sarah acknowledged. But it would also minimize casualties while ensuring mission success. The current approach will eventually break through their defenses, but we'll lose 60 to 70% of our forces doing it. General Korath's chittering had taken on a different tone. Less mocking, more thoughtful. Your analysis assumes we can precisely time our attacks to exploit these resonance patterns. How do you propose to achieve such coordination across multiple species with different combat doctrines? By using human coordination protocols, Sarah replied without hesitation. My species developed rapid adaptation tactics specifically because we usually fight while outnumbered and outgunned. We've learned to coordinate complex operations under extreme pressure. Admiral Vextai's voice carried a note of skepticism. You would have us abandon our proven military traditions in favor of human improvisation? I would have you use the best tool for the job, Sarah answered firmly. Right now, that tool is human tactical analysis combined with your superior firepower and numbers. The channel went quiet again. Sarah waited, knowing that her entire career and possibly humanity's standing in the Alliance hung in the balance. She had revealed capabilities that her species preferred to keep hidden, gambling that the immediate tactical situation was worth the risk. Finally, General Korath spoke again. Very well, Analyst Chen. You will have the opportunity to implement your plan. But understand this. If your assessment proves incorrect, if your coordination protocols fail, the responsibility for our losses will rest squarely on your shoulders. Sarah felt a familiar calm settle over her, the same feeling she had experienced before every major engagement of her career. Understood, General. I'll need tactical command authority over all Allied forces during the operation. You ask for a great deal of trust, Admiral Vextai observed. Yes, sir, I do, Sarah replied quietly. But I'm offering you victory in return. Sarah materialized on the command ship's bridge in a shimmer of transport energy, her modest supply ship uniform replaced by full tactical gear. The bridge crew turned to stare as she approached the central command station, her small form somehow commanding attention in the vast space filled with towering alien officers. Analyst Chen reporting for tactical command, sir, she said to General Korath, who studied her with new interest. The massive Zetharian's mandibles moved in what she now recognized as careful consideration rather than mockery. The bridge is yours, human, he said, stepping aside from the main tactical display. Show us these coordination protocols you claim can succeed where our methods have failed. Sarah moved to the command station, her hands flying over the control interfaces. The aliens had designed their systems for much larger beings, but she had trained extensively on multi-species equipment. Within moments, she had reconfigured the display to show real-time tactical data from all Allied forces. All units, this is tactical command, she spoke into the communication array, her voice carrying clearly across all Allied frequencies. We are implementing new operational parameters. Stand by for coordination updates. Commander Thex 9's crystalline form chimed softly as he processed the speed of her interface manipulation. Impressive technical adaptation, but the Vex have been monitoring our communications. They will anticipate any new tactics the moment we implement them. Actually, they won't, Sarah replied, pulling up a secondary display showing communication patterns. The Vex monitor and analyze, but they require 17.4 minutes to fully adapt to new tactical approaches. We're going to hit them with 4 different tactics simultaneously, each one changing every 15 minutes. Admiral Vexitai's scales shifted to a confused orange-brown. How can you know their adaptation time frame so precisely? Because I've been feeding them false tactical data for the past 2 years, Sarah said simply, not looking up from her displays. Every engagement between human forces and Vex units has been carefully designed to make them believe we're predictable. Today they learn otherwise. The bridge fell silent except for the humming of various alien technologies. Sarah continued configuring the tactical displays, overlaying her analysis with real-time battlefield data. The Vex fortress loomed on the main screen, its crystalline walls gleaming with deadly beauty. First phase begins now, Sarah announced. Zetharian air support, implement pattern Delta 79er. Thexian ground forces, advance along vectors I'm uploading to your tactical computers. Vextai engineering units, begin resonance bombardment at precisely the coordinates I'm marking. General Korath watched the displays as Allied forces began moving in patterns unlike anything the aliens had used before. Instead of the massive frontal assault they favored, units were spreading out in seemingly random patterns, striking at multiple points simultaneously. Your forces are dispersed across too wide an area, he observed. This reduces the concentration of firepower at any given point. Traditional thinking, Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across multiple control interfaces simultaneously. The Vex are designed to handle concentrated attacks. They're not optimized for dealing with coordinated strikes from unexpected angles. The first explosions lit up the planet's surface as Vextai engineering charges detonated at precisely calculated intervals. Sarah watched the tactical display intently, monitoring the fortress's power grid through sensor readings. Resonance cascade initiated, she announced. Zetharian forces, adjust your bombardment pattern. The Vex shields will fail in sectors 7 through 12 in approximately 43 seconds. Admiral Vextai studied the sensor readings with growing amazement. The power fluctuations are exactly as you predicted. How is this possible? Vex biomechanical architecture follows mathematical principles, Sarah explained, while simultaneously coordinating 3 different assault groups. Their organic systems create natural harmonics that can be calculated and exploited. The trick is hitting them at exactly the right frequency and timing. On the planetary surface, Zetharian warriors were advancing through terrain that had seemed impossible to traverse just hours before. The seemingly random pattern of their movement suddenly revealed its logic as defensive positions that should have been mutually supporting found themselves isolated and vulnerable. Commander Thex 9 monitored the communications between Vex units, his crystalline structure flickering rapidly as he processed the intercepted data. The enemy is showing signs of confusion. Their coordination is deteriorating. Phase 2, Sarah announced. All ground forces, implement human tactical doctrine 7-7 Alpha. Air support, provide cover for the advancing teams, but maintain unpredictable flight patterns. Remember, the moment you become predictable, you become dead. She watched as alien forces that had trained for centuries in traditional formations suddenly shifted to fluid, adaptive tactics that would have been familiar to any human special forces unit. The rigid military hierarchies that typically defined alien combat doctrine gave way to flexible team structures that could respond and adapt in real time. The change was dramatic. Vex defensive positions that had held firm against hours of conventional assault began falling within minutes as attacking forces hit them from angles the biomechanical minds had never considered possible. Impossible! General Korath breathed, watching his warriors advance further in 20 minutes than they had in the previous 6 hours. Your tactical doctrine violates every principle of effective unit coordination. From your perspective, yes, Sarah agreed, never taking her eyes off the tactical displays. But humans don't have the luxury of overwhelming force or superior technology. We've learned to win through unpredictability, adaptation, and exploiting enemy assumptions. A new alarm sounded on the command display. Sarah's hands flew to the controls, analyzing the incoming data. Her expression tightened as she processed the information. "The Vex are adapting faster than projected," she announced. "They're pulling forces from their secondary positions to reinforce the primary defensive line. Time to Phase 3. Admiral Vextai studied the new enemy dispositions. "They've abandoned their flanking positions to strengthen their core defenses. Standard military doctrine would suggest we exploit those undefended flanks." "Which is exactly what they want us to do," Sarah replied grimly. "Those positions were abandoned too quickly, too completely. It's a trap designed to channel our forces into a predetermined kill zone." She highlighted several areas on the tactical display where the Vex forces had withdrawn. "Look at the terrain features. Look at the sight lines. Look at the power grid configurations. They're herding us toward the one place where their remaining defenses can achieve maximum effectiveness." Commander Thex 9's structure chimed in recognition. "A tactical deception. They want us to believe we've found a weakness when they've actually prepared a strength." "Exactly," Sarah confirmed. "But their deception reveals something they didn't intend to show us, their actual defensive priorities. By analyzing what they're willing to sacrifice, we can determine what they're truly protecting." Her fingers flew over the controls again, overlaying new data on the display. "There," she said, pointing to a section of the fortress that appeared heavily defended but showed subtle differences in energy patterns. "That's not a defensive position. That's their command center disguised as a strong point." General Korath's mandibles clicked in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as admiration. "You would strike at their command structure rather than attempting to breach their defenses?" "I would do both," Sarah corrected. "But the timing has to be perfect. If we hit the command center too early, they'll adapt and relocate. Too late, and they'll have time to coordinate a counterattack." She activated the shipboard communication system, broadcasting to all Allied forces simultaneously. "All units, this is tactical command. Prepare for coordinated assault on primary target. You will receive individual targeting data in 30 seconds. This is a precision strike. Timing is critical." As data flowed to the various unit commanders, Sarah found herself thinking about the path that had brought her to this moment. 3 years ago, she had been a junior analyst working on theoretical Vex behavioral patterns. Her superiors had thought her theories about biomechanical psychology were interesting, but impractical. The first time she had tested those theories in actual combat had been during the defense of Kepler Station. A small Vex scouting force had been probing the station's defenses for weeks, testing response times and defensive capabilities. Standard procedure was to maintain defensive positions and wait for reinforcements. Instead, Sarah had convinced the station commander to let her try a different approach. She had analyzed the Vex attack patterns and realized they were following a predictable progression, like a biological growth pattern. By feeding them specific responses at carefully timed intervals, she could manipulate their behavior, leading them into a trap of their own making. The operation had worked perfectly. The Vex scouts, expecting human defenders to behave in predictable ways, had been completely unprepared for tactics that seemed to anticipate their every move. What should have been a successful reconnaissance mission turned into a disaster for the Vex forces. "Tactical Command, this is Zetharian Alpha Group." General Korath's voice brought her back to the present. "We are in position for the primary assault." "Thexian units ready," Commander Thex 9 added. "Vextai forces standing by?" Admiral Vextai confirmed. Sarah took a deep breath, watching as the final pieces of her plan moved into position. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If her analysis was wrong, if her understanding of Vex psychology was flawed, the entire Allied force would be walking into a massacre. "All units, begin final approach," she ordered. "Remember, This is not a conventional assault. You are not trying to overwhelm their defenses. You are trying to confuse and disorient them long enough to reach the primary target. On the display, hundreds of Allied units began converging on the fortress from directions that seemed tactically unsound. Some approached through terrain that offered no cover. Others advanced along routes that appeared to lead away from their objectives. To any conventional military mind, it looked like chaos. But Sarah could see the pattern. Each movement was designed to force the Vex defenders to make specific decisions, to channel their responses in predetermined directions. She was playing a game of three-dimensional chess, where every move by the enemy had been anticipated and countered in advance. "Enemy fire intensifying," reported a Zetharian unit commander. "They're targeting our advance teams with concentrated fire." "Maintain approach vectors," Sarah ordered calmly. "Their targeting priorities are exactly what we expected. Continue to Phase 4 execution." Commander Thex 9 was monitoring enemy communications, his crystalline form cycling through rapid color patterns as he processed the intercepted data. "The Vex are showing signs of systematic confusion. Their coordination protocols are experiencing cascading failures." "They're trying to adapt to 4 different tactical approaches simultaneously," Sarah explained. Her attention split between multiple data streams. "Their biomechanical minds can't process that much contradictory information without creating internal conflicts." Admiral Vextai watched the tactical display with growing fascination. His scales had shifted to a deep blue that indicated profound respect. "You are not merely defeating them tactically. You are attacking their cognitive processes directly." "The mind is the ultimate battlefield," Sarah replied. "Physical defenses can be rebuilt, weapons can be replaced, but psychological warfare creates damage that's much harder to repair." A new alert flashed on her display. The first Allied units had reached the outer perimeter of the Vex command center. Sarah could see that her analysis had been correct. The facility was heavily defended, but the defenses were oriented toward repelling conventional assault rather than the multi-vector approach her forces were using. "All units, initiate final phase," she announced. "You know your targets. You know your timing. Execute with precision." The next few minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Zetharian warriors breached the outer defenses, just as Thexian energy weapons disrupted the power grid. Vextai explosives detonated at precisely calculated intervals, creating resonance patterns that shattered crystalline support structures. Through it all, Sarah coordinated and adjusted, responding to changing conditions with the fluid adaptability that characterized human tactical doctrine. When a Zetharian unit encountered unexpected resistance, she immediately rerouted 2 Thexian squads to provide support. When Vex defenders attempted to reposition their forces, she anticipated the movement and had Vexitai engineers ready with blocking fire. "Command center defenses are failing," reported the lead assault team. "We have visual confirmation of the primary target." Sarah felt a moment of intense satisfaction as her analysis was confirmed. The Vex command center was exactly where she had predicted, defended exactly as she had calculated, and vulnerable to exactly the approach she had designed. "All units, prepare for extraction," she ordered. "Once the command center is neutralized, enemy forces will lose coordination, but may become unpredictably aggressive. Do not attempt to hold positions. Execute planned withdrawal to extraction points." The final assault took less than 10 minutes. Allied forces struck the Vex command center with overwhelming force at precisely the moment when the biomechanical defenders were most confused and disorganized. The facility's destruction sent cascading failures throughout the entire fortress network. Sarah watched on the tactical display as Vex forces across the planet began showing signs of coordination failure. Without their central command structure, the individual units retained their deadly effectiveness, but lost their strategic cohesion. "Extraction complete," General Korath reported. "All Allied forces have successfully withdrawn to safe positions. Enemy resistance has collapsed." The bridge erupted in what Sarah assumed was celebration, though the sounds made by different alien species were unfamiliar to her human ears. Commander Thex 9's crystalline form was cycling through brilliant patterns of light. Admiral Vextai's scales had shifted to triumphant gold, and General Korath's chittering had taken on a rhythm that sounded almost musical. "Analyst Chen," Admiral Vextai approached her command station, his reptilian features showing something she had never seen before, genuine respect. "Your tactical assessment was unprecedented. I have never witnessed a strategic analysis of such precision and effectiveness." Sarah felt the familiar mixture of exhaustion and satisfaction that followed successful operations. "Thank you, Admiral. It was a team effort." "No." General Korath's voice carried a weight of authority that commanded attention. "This victory belongs to human tactical genius. We provided the force, but you provided the strategy that made victory possible with minimal casualties." Commander Thex 9 approached as well, his optical sensors focused intently on Sarah. "You have demonstrated capabilities that our Alliance intelligence assessments severely underestimated. The question now becomes, how many more humans possess such strategic abilities?" Sarah considered her answer carefully. The truth was that while her specific expertise with Vex psychology was unique, her general tactical approach was standard human military doctrine. Every human officer was trained in adaptive, unpredictable warfare because their species had learned that predictability meant death. But revealing that information would fundamentally change the balance of power within the Alliance. These aliens had treated humanity as junior partners because they believed humans were less capable. Learning that human tactical doctrine was specifically designed to counter the kind of systematic thinking that alien minds preferred could create complications. "Human tactical training emphasizes adaptability," she said finally. "We've learned to expect the unexpected and prepare for multiple contingencies." It was a diplomatic answer that revealed nothing while implying everything. The alien officers exchanged glances that she couldn't interpret, but she could sense that the dynamic between them had changed fundamentally. "The Vex Collective has been the primary threat to this sector for over 50 years, Admiral Vextai said quietly. "No single engagement has ever resulted in such a decisive victory with so few losses. Your species has capabilities that we underestimated." General Korath's mandibles clicked in what Sarah now recognized as thoughtful consideration. The question becomes, what do we do with this new understanding of human potential? Sarah remained silent, knowing that anything she said could have far-reaching consequences for humanity's position in the galactic community. The next few moments would determine whether her success here opened doors for her species or created new challenges. The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Thex 9's crystalline form chimed softly as he processed incoming communications from the planetary surface. "General," he announced, his optical sensors widening with what appeared to be shock. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vex remnant forces on the planet. They're requesting permission to surrender to the human commander." The message came through on emergency frequencies, bypassing all normal communication protocols. Sarah stared at the translation scrolling across her display, reading it twice to make sure she understood correctly. "Translation confirmed," Commander Thex 9 announced, his crystalline form flickering with rapid calculations. "The Vex remnant forces are requesting formal surrender terms. They specifically ask to negotiate with the tactical mind that achieved perfect strategic dominance." General Korath's mandibles clicked in confusion. "The Vex Collective does not surrender. In 50 years of warfare, they have never shown any inclination toward negotiation. They fight until destroyed or until they achieve victory." "They're a hive mind," Admiral Vextai added, his scales shifting to a puzzled orange-yellow. Surrender isn't a concept that exists in their psychological framework. Individual units cannot make independent decisions about cessation of hostilities. Sarah studied the incoming transmission more carefully, analyzing not just the words, but the communication patterns and frequency modulation. What she discovered made her blood run cold. "They're not requesting surrender," she said slowly, her voice carrying a weight that made the entire bridge crew focus on her words. "They're requesting audience with a superior commander." The silence that followed was profound. Even the background hum of the ship's systems seemed muted as the implications of her statement sank in. "Impossible," General Korath breathed. "You suggest that the Vex Collective recognizes human tactical superiority?" "I suggest that the Vex Collective recognizes strategic dominance when they encounter it," Sarah replied, her mind racing through the implications. "Their hive mind operates on hierarchical principles. When they encounter a tactical intelligence that completely outmaneuvers them, their psychological framework interprets that as encountering a superior command entity." Commander Thex-9's optical sensors focused intently on the communication displays. "If your assessment is correct, then the Vex forces on the planet are no longer operating as part of the collective. They have effectively transferred their loyalty to what they perceive as the dominant command intelligence." Admiral Vextai's scales had shifted to a deep purple that Sarah had never seen before. "In all our encounters with the Vex, such a phenomenon has never been recorded. Are you saying that your tactical victory was so complete that it triggered a psychological restructuring of their entire command hierarchy?" Sarah felt a mixture of pride and deep unease. This was far beyond anything she had anticipated. Her plan had been to defeat the Vex forces, not to somehow claim authority over them. "The biomechanical mind operates on principles of efficiency and hierarchy," she explained, trying to work through the implications as she spoke. "When they encounter a command intelligence that demonstrates superior strategic capabilities, their psychological programming interprets it as encountering a higher-level entity in their own hierarchy." "They think you're their superior officer," General Korath said flatly. "They think I'm a superior form of tactical intelligence," Sarah corrected. "To them, strategic dominance equals hierarchical authority. By completely outmaneuvering their command structure, I accidentally triggered their submission protocols." The communication array chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Commander Thex-9 activated the display, and the bridge was suddenly filled with the presence of something that should have been impossible. A Vex command entity speaking directly to alien forces. The creature that appeared on the screen was unlike anything Sarah had seen in intelligence briefings. Where most Vex units were biomechanical combinations of organic tissue and crystalline technology, this entity was almost entirely organic. Its fluid form shifted and flowed as it spoke, and its communication patterns were unlike the rigid mathematical precision typical of Vex transmissions. "We seek audience with the command entity that demonstrated perfect strategy," the creature spoke, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated strangely in the ship's audio systems. "We acknowledge superior tactical intelligence and request integration into command structure." The alien officers on the bridge exchanged glances of complete bewilderment. Sarah realized that she was the only one who understood what was happening. "They're not just surrendering," she said quietly. "They're offering to join our forces under my command." Admiral Vextai's scales shifted through several colors rapidly before settling on a shocked white. "They want to serve under human leadership?" "They want to serve under strategic leadership they recognize as superior," Sarah clarified. "The distinction is important because it means this isn't about species loyalty, it's about tactical recognition." General Korath's chittering had taken on a tone that Sarah couldn't interpret. "You realize what this means for the balance of power in this sector? The Vex have been the primary threat to all our civilizations. If they now consider humans to be their commanders—" Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This was far beyond her authority to handle. This was a diplomatic and strategic situation that could reshape the entire galactic political landscape. "I need to speak with Earth Command," she said firmly. "This situation requires authority levels far above my rank." "No," Admiral Vextai said unexpectedly. "The Vex are requesting audience with you specifically. If we delay or attempt to substitute another authority figure, we risk losing this opportunity entirely." Commander Thex-9's crystalline structure was cycling through rapid patterns as he processed multiple data streams simultaneously. "I am receiving confirmation from our intelligence networks. Vex forces across 3 systems have ceased all hostile activities and are broadcasting requests for contact with the Perfect Strategy entity. This phenomenon is spreading throughout their entire network." Sarah felt a moment of vertigo as the scope of the situation became clear. Her tactical victory on Zerion Prime hadn't just defeated a single Vex force, it had somehow triggered a psychological cascade throughout the entire collective. "How is that possible?" she asked, though part of her mind was already working through the implications. "The Vex Collective operates as a distributed consciousness," General Korath explained. "Information and experience are shared instantaneously across their entire network. Your tactical demonstration here was immediately transmitted to every Vex unit in existence." "And they all reached the same conclusion," Admiral Vextai added, his voice carrying a note of what might have been awe, "that they had encountered a superior strategic intelligence." Sarah looked at the communication display where the Vex entity waited patiently for her response. She could see similar creatures appearing on secondary screens as more Vex units requested communication. All of them were waiting for her decision. "What happens if I accept their allegiance?" she asked quietly. "You become the de facto commander of the most powerful military force in known space," Admiral Vextai replied bluntly. "The Vex Collective has technology and capabilities that exceed any individual species in our alliance." "And what happens if I refuse?" Commander Thex-9's optical sensors dimmed slightly. "Unknown. The Vex psychological framework may not have parameters for dealing with rejection from a recognized superior authority. They could become unpredictably aggressive, or they might simply shut down entirely." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change the course of galactic history. The small girl who had been dismissed as a logistics coordinator was about to make a decision that would affect billions of lives. "Open a channel," she said finally. "All Vex units, all allied frequencies." The communication array activated, broadcasting her words across multiple star systems simultaneously. Sarah could feel the weight of countless eyes, both alien and biomechanical, focused on her next words. "This is Strategic Analyst Sarah Chen of Earth Command," she began, her voice carrying the authority she had earned through tactical brilliance. "I acknowledge the tactical recognition offered by Vex forces, but I do not accept unconditional allegiance." The bridge crew stirred in surprise. This was not what any of them had expected her to say. "Instead," Sarah continued, "I propose a new framework. The Vex Collective has demonstrated remarkable tactical adaptation and strategic capability. Rather than seeking to dominate or be dominated, I suggest we explore the possibility of true strategic cooperation." The Vex entity on the primary display shifted its form in what Sarah interpreted as intense consideration. When it spoke, its voice carried new harmonics. "Strategic cooperation implies mutual recognition of tactical authority. This concept does not exist in our hierarchical framework." "Then perhaps it's time to expand your framework," Sarah replied firmly. "True strategic excellence comes not from dominance, but from the ability to coordinate diverse capabilities toward common objectives." She activated the tactical displays, showing the recent engagement from multiple perspectives. Look at what we achieved on Xerion Prime. Your technological capabilities, combined with allied resources and human tactical coordination, produced results that none of us could have achieved independently. General Korath's mandibles moved in what Sarah now recognized as deep thought. You propose an alliance based on mutual tactical recognition rather than hierarchical dominance. I propose an alliance based on strategic excellence, Sarah corrected. Every species brings unique capabilities to the table. The key is learning how to coordinate those capabilities effectively. Admiral Vextai's scales had shifted to a contemplative blue-green. Such an alliance would require the Vex to abandon their traditional hierarchical thinking in favor of cooperative strategic planning. It would require all of us to abandon some traditional thinking, Sarah replied. But the results would be worth it. The Vex entity processed this information for several minutes, its form shifting through configurations that Sarah suspected represented rapid internal consultation with the broader collective. Finally, it spoke again. Strategic cooperation is acceptable. We acknowledge mutual tactical excellence and request participation in coordinated strategic framework. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had managed to navigate the situation without either claiming dominion over the Vex or rejecting their offer entirely. Excellent, she replied. We'll need to establish protocols for coordination and communication. This is going to require extensive planning and preparation. Commander Thex 9 approached her command station, his crystalline form chiming softly. Analyst Chen, you realize that you have just negotiated an end to the 50-year conflict between the Vex Collective and all allied species? The weight of that statement hit her like a physical blow. She had been so focused on the immediate tactical and diplomatic challenges that she hadn't fully processed the broader implications of what was happening. Moreover, General Korath added, you have established humanity as the primary strategic authority for what will now be the most powerful military alliance in known space. Sarah looked around the bridge at the alien officers who had dismissed her just days before. Admiral Vextai was studying her with obvious respect, his scales showing the deep blue of profound admiration. Commander Thex 9's optical sensors were focused on her with what appeared to be fascination. General Korath's entire posture had changed from condescending tolerance to deferential attention. I didn't set out to accomplish any of that, she said honestly. I just wanted to minimize casualties while completing the mission. Which demonstrates exactly why you were the right choice for this situation, Admiral Vextai replied. True strategic excellence comes from focusing on objectives rather than personal aggrandizement. A new communication signal appeared on the display. Sarah recognized the insignia of Earth Command and felt a moment of panic. How was she going to explain this situation to her superiors? Analyst Chen, this is Admiral Harrison of Earth Command. The familiar voice of her ultimate commanding officer filled the bridge. We've been monitoring the situation. Are you prepared to brief us on recent developments? Sarah straightened unconsciously, falling into military bearing despite the unprecedented circumstances. Yes, sir. The tactical situation has evolved considerably since my last report. So we've gathered, Admiral Harrison replied dryly. Half the Vex Collective is requesting to join our forces, and the other half has ceased all hostile activities. I assume you have an explanation for this development? Over the next hour, Sarah provided a comprehensive briefing on the tactical, psychological, and diplomatic aspects of the situation. She explained her analysis of Vex psychology, her tactical approach to the engagement, and the unexpected consequences that had resulted from her strategic success. When she finished, Admiral Harrison was silent for a long moment before speaking again. Analyst Chen, you are hereby promoted to the rank of Colonel and assigned as Strategic Coordination Officer for all Alliance military operations. You will report directly to Earth Command, but you will have tactical authority over all Allied forces, including our new Vex partners. Sarah felt a moment of disorientation. 3 days ago, she had been a junior analyst assigned to logistics coordination. Now she was apparently one of the most powerful military officers in known space. "Sir, I'm not sure I'm qualified for such a position," she began. "Colonel," Admiral Harrison interrupted, "you just ended a 50-year war and established humanity as the primary strategic authority for a galactic alliance. I think your qualifications speak for themselves." As the communication ended, Sarah found herself facing the alien officers who had once dismissed her as a girl soldier. The irony wasn't lost on her. They had been right that she didn't look like their idea of a warrior. They had simply failed to understand that human warfare operated on different principles than alien military tradition. General Korath approached her first, his massive form moving with careful respect. "Colonel Chen," he said formally, "the Zetharian military requests the honor of serving under your strategic command." Admiral Vextai followed, his scales showing the deep blue of profound respect. "The Vextai fleet places itself at your disposal, Colonel. We have much to learn from human tactical doctrine." Commander Thex IX's crystalline form chimed in harmony as he added his voice to the chorus of respect. "The Thexian Defense Forces acknowledge your strategic authority, Colonel. We look forward to incorporating your coordination protocols into our training programs." Sarah looked at each of them, remembering their initial dismissal and mockery. She felt no satisfaction in their changed attitudes, only the weight of responsibility for the lives and civilizations now depending on her strategic decisions. "Thank you," she said simply. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." As if summoned by her words, the Vex entity appeared again on the communication display. But this time, instead of the flowing organic form she had seen before, the creature had restructured itself into something that looked remarkably like a formal military salute. "Strategic Command Authority acknowledged," the entity announced, its voice carrying harmonics that somehow conveyed respect across species barriers. "Vex Collective reporting for coordination and strategic instruction." Similar displays activated across the bridge as Vex units from dozens of systems appeared, each one arranged in what was unmistakably a posture of military respect. The sight was surreal. Biomechanical entities that had been the terror of known space for half a century, now saluting a small human woman who had started the day as a dismissed logistics coordinator. Sarah returned the salute with the crisp precision that had been drilled into her during her earliest military training. As she did so, she realized that this moment would be remembered as the point when humanity stepped onto the galactic stage not as junior partners, but as strategic equals. The girl soldier they had laughed at was gone. In her place stood Colonel Sarah Chen, Strategic Coordination Officer, commander of the most powerful military alliance in galactic history. And the enemy, former enemy, saluted her as their superior commander, acknowledging the strategic brilliance that had earned humanity its place among the stars. General Korath's mandibles clicked in what Sarah now recognized as profound respect. "Colonel," he said quietly, "I believe we owe your species an apology. We underestimated not just your capabilities, but the entire nature of human strategic thinking." Sarah nodded, accepting the acknowledgement without gloating. "We all have a lot to learn from each other, General. That's what's going to make this alliance stronger than any of our individual forces." As she spoke those words, Sarah realized that the laughter had indeed stopped. In its place was something far more valuable, the respect of allies and former enemies alike, earned through tactical excellence and strategic vision. The small human who had been dismissed as inadequate had become the commander they all looked to for leadership. And in the vast tapestry of galactic politics, that change would reshape the balance of power for generations to come.